My name is Jane Heflin. I'm Director of the National Bridal Market, and we're bringing you today a special webinar about the new normal in taking care of gowns that's probably different across the states as far as who's in what stage of opening, but pretty much the same as far as taking care of your gowns in between trying them on the brides, people touching them. So today we have Tami from Great Lakes Wedding Gown Specialist. Welcome to the webinar, Tami. And she is going to be giving some demonstrations that we hope will help you move through this new normal that we have. And she has been given the questions that you all submitted, and we're going to try to get to most of them. So she's going to be giving a video presentation first and then answering the questions. And we'll try to monitor more questions as they come on. So Tami, please tell us a little bit about yourself and take it away.
Thanks. Well, thanks, Jane, for allowing me to do this. First of all, I'm really excited to talk to all of you out there. My name is Tami Parks. I own Great Lakes Wedding Gown Specialist, and I'm in Holland, Michigan. So you've probably all heard of our famous governor who has really closed things down for a while. Things are starting to open here in Michigan. In my studio, we do resale and wholesale gown care. So we did start seeing brides this week, which was really exciting. Next week, our bridal shops are able to be open by appointment only, starting next week. So we're kind of just getting started with all of these things ourselves. Little about me, I have a dry cleaner's background. I grew up in the dry cleaning industry. I started working in the cleaners when I was 13. Started preserving wedding gowns with my mom when I was 15 and fell in love with the bridal industry. I owned a bridal boutique from 2007 until 2014 when I sold it. That store is still in operation here in Holland, Michigan, and I work very closely with the new owner. And so I only have positive, absolutely wonderful feelings for you bridal boutique owners. And hopefully I can help you today as you get ready to open. I'm a member of the Association of Wedding Gown Specialists, and we all receive training regularly as far as how to handle gowns, working with each other, giving each other advice. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you today comes from that, as well as my dry cleaning background and my love for wedding gowns in general. I'm going to go through my presentation. Like Jane said, I have received a lot of your questions, and I think they're going to be answered as we go along. However, as we go, I'm also monitoring the Q&A here. So if you do have a question that I'm not answering as we go, feel free to drop it in there, and I will try to answer as we go along. If I don't get to it, we're going to have a time for Q&A at the end as well. But please, if you do have a question for me, please put it in the Q&A. I'm not monitoring the chat right now. And so if you have a question about technicalities and those kind of things, the chat's a great place for that. A Q&A is a great place for me for what we're talking about today. I want to start with just some general information, what we know about COVID-19 virus, how it's transmitted, and how long it lives on fabrics, what we know about fabrics responding to it, and those type of things. So understand with me, just like everything else, all of this is going to possibly change. You've all watched with me over the 8 to 10 last few weeks. Information kind of changes as we go. So I'm going from what I've studied now and what our best practices and our best knowledge is now. The virus is transmitted by droplets that come from an infected person's eyes, nose, and mouth, and are then on their hands and they touch something or in the air, and someone else either gets it on their hand or it's in the air, and we touch our eyes, nose, mouth, and that is how the virus is transmitted. So what we want to do is limit, first of all, that possibility. What we're talking about today with gowns is really a second tier. The first tier is, let's make sure we have in place things in our own lifestyle and in our boutiques that will stop those droplets from getting on the gowns, on the hangers, on, someone mentioned leather chairs. Yes, I'll definitely talk about that. Chairs in our fitting room, curtains in our fitting room, those type of things. So I think it's very important, and we're going to talk about this a little as we go, to make sure you have those procedures in place in your store as well. This is a second tier type of thing when we're actually addressing the wedding gowns. Best information we have is that COVID-19 will live on fabric for about 24 hours max. Probably not that long. In some circumstances, it might be a little longer. This is one thing I want you to think about. If you store your wedding gowns, if you store your sample gowns in plastic, this may be a time to rethink that. It seems counterintuitive. It seems like you want to put the gown in plastic, get it away from everything so nothing can touch it. However, we've also learned that air and circulation can help to keep these the microscopic particles off of things. So you do want gowns out in the open, hanging as much as possible. And that'll become a little clearer as I talk about how I think you should sanitize or disinfect or clean. All of those are the same thing. As I talk about how I think you should do that, not putting it in plastic is going to be even more important. So it's just something to think about. If you do that, you may want to revisit that at this time. COVID-19 can be killed in two ways on fabric. One is soap and water. Again, we've all heard, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. So the soap is very important, both on hands, but especially in fabric, because what soap does is it loosens up the fibers and it makes the things that are on the fibers slippery so they can slip out. So we're talking, dirt, grime, blood, ink, any of those things that get on gowns, and also virus particles. We make them slippery so they come out. The water washes them or flushes them away. We're not so concerned with the temperature of water right now. So it makes sense, we want to think about using hot water. But we want to use the temperature of water that is good for the gown. So if we're working on a silk gown, we're going to use a lower temperature of water than if we're working on a polyester gown or a lace gown. We can be a little more aggressive, but we're going to match that temperature of water to the fiber, not necessarily worrying about the virus in this case. It's the soap that's going to make that slippery, kind of coat the particle and get it out of the way. So soap and water is one way we know we can kill this virus on fabric. The other way we know we can kill the virus on fabric is by using hot steam. The virus can't live above about 168 degrees. And so if you think about steam, it's boiling water. So it's coming out of whatever's generating the steam at about 212 degrees. It cools off quickly, but that's kind of where we're starting from. So we know that steam can kill these viruses. I'm going to teach you today using mostly steam to address your dresses and kill the virus on them, because it's something you all have. There's no sense going out right now and buying something brand new to do this. You have access to steam, so I think it's one of the greatest things to use to kill it. It's quick and it's effective. So we know steam can kill the virus. We also know that right now, moving on to rather than just fabrics, let's talk about perception a little bit. Everybody is nervous about dirty things. So right now, I think perception is going to be very, very important in your boutique. You want to make sure that your gowns are clean. Like I said, I owned a bridal shop, so I really understand how sample gowns can get that kind of grimy look to them. And I think now is a very important time to make sure that your gowns look great. A bride is already going to be a little nervous, and if your store or your gowns or other things aren't looking their best and sparkling clean, I think you're going to have to kind of fight that perception thing, even if it's not COVID-19 on them. So that's one thing I want you to think about a little bit, is that perception. If your store is clean and you are practicing all these really good protocols, you do not have to clean your gowns every day. You do not have to clean every gown in your store every day. So don't worry about that. You only need to address the gowns that have been tried on recently. If your store has been closed for a long time now, you don't have to go in and clean all those gowns, just the ones that look a little grimy and you need to freshen up. Especially if gowns are hanging out in the open. If you have gowns tried on a Friday or Saturday and they're not going to get tried on again until Monday or Tuesday, you probably don't even need to do the protocol that we're talking about here today, unless you're doing it for your consultant's benefit. But as far as a bride trying something on, a dress that had been tried on Friday, she's going to try it on Tuesday. This is not a concern that you need to have, and you don't need to worry about doing anything special. That time is going to kill the virus. So what we're going to talk about is a specific process to steam your gowns that will disinfect them, clean them, sanitize. I'm going to use those words interchangeably. They are interchangeable. And then I also want to help you with a few tips that you can use to actually clean a gown fully, rather than just disinfecting or sanitizing spots of it that may have been touched. If somebody sneezes on the gown, or somebody tried it on who was ill, you might want to talk about actually having that gown fully cleaned. So we're going to talk about that today too. And then I want to touch on a couple ideas for you, just coming from my perspective, of some ways that you might be able to help your brides with postponement packages, giving them some good tips on storing their gowns if their wedding has been postponed, and then also maybe a few ways you can help them if they're having a ceremony and then a reception later. What are some packages that you can offer them and some advice that you can offer them? So we're going to start with the big thing we're talking about today, and that is disinfecting or cleaning or sanitizing a gown after it has been tried on. The first thing you want to do is set up a little station near your fitting area. You can call it a holding area, you can call it a steaming station, you could call it a disinfecting area, you could come up with something really great that fits your brand. Have a powwow about it with your team and come up with something to call this, but it's going to be some sort of holding station. And you're going to need a rack so that you can hang gowns on there that come out of the fitting room. You're going to need your steamer or your steam iron right there. You're going to need your disinfecting or freshening spray. And don't worry, I will get to this as we go on and explain what's in it and what is the good use of it. And then you're going to want to have some cloths too. You can, these are just white cloths. Buy them cheap at wherever, if you can get anywhere to buy them now. But, old rags, cleaning rags from home, those kind of things, have them be white or ivory because we don't use any other color when we're dealing with wedding gowns, but just have some cloths there too. So you have had a fitting, hopefully the bride has bought, and now you have 5-6 gowns that she has tried on, and you've had a consultant helping her, and what do you do with them? Take them from the fitting room to this holding area. My advice would be have one consultant work with one bride. The consultant who works with that bride is the same consultant, who takes the gowns to the holding area and addresses them there. That way you just keep minimizing the amount of people that may come into contact with anything negative. So the gowns get to the holding area, you hang them up, and you're going to steam the areas that have been touched the most. Now, to me, I think about the zipper. Everybody's been touching the zipper. I think about inside the bodice and the front of the bodice here. Brides are touching that, not to mention if their nose is runny, or even talking. We all know just talking, you have droplets come out. Maybe they cried. There's all sorts of things that are happening here that can land here. So this to me is a really important area to address. Another important area, I'm going to go back here, and you all know how brides like to do that while they're trying things on, right? They touch their face and then they're going down and touching their dress right there, except it's not their dress, it's your sample dress. So you want to get to that area as well. So you're going to have a high quality steamer. Hopefully you already have one of these. I use this. It's the iron, it's a steam iron, it's professional grade. So when I demonstrate today, I'm going to be using this. You might also just have a high quality seamstress or home iron that puts out a good amount of steam. That's important. You might have something that looks like this. That's okay too, as long as you're getting a nice amount of hot steam out there and it does not spit. You need to really worry about that, especially if you deal with any kind of silk in your boutique. A spitting steamer can ruin a silk gown. So just make sure you're getting nice, hot, strong steam out of it and it's not spitting. And you're going to take whatever you decide to use and you're going to shoot some steam right along the zipper. Both sides. Be careful, you can burn yourself. Outside, inside, hot steam at the zipper. Also inside the bodice. Even silk gowns where you need to be really careful on the outside, on the inside, often that's not made of silk. That's a polyester lining, so you can be a little more aggressive on the inside. Turn the gown around. Elizabeth, you're asking, I will get to ultraviolet light, I promise, I will get to that. They're concerned about making the particle airborne again with the steam. No, because the steam is killing it. So it just can't live. And then I'm gonna do the front bodice the same way. Just give it good steam, and then again, addressing those areas down at the bottom where she may have touched. This is another good reason that the same consultant steams the gowns than did the gowns helped the, excuse me, let me back up. The same consultant who helped the bride steams the gown because you've watched the bride and you know where she's been touching and the type of bride she was. If she was wearing a mask, maybe we don't have to do quite as heavy steaming. If she's a face toucher and then a gown toucher, you know you need to pay a little extra attention to that. So, and again, remember, all of this is second tier, second level. You've already done everything you can to minimize droplets coming on the gown. So this is a second tier, but now we're going to go through and we're going to steam any areas that possibly could have gotten droplets on them. After you're done with the steaming, then you're going to take your gown freshener spray. You're all going to, everyone who signed up for this webinar, you're going to get my recipe for gown freshener spray. It's a do-it-yourself. You don't have to buy it from anywhere. Mine was formulated for stinky gowns. So we've all had that happen. Backing up a little, in the old days, some of our biggest problems with sample gowns where you had someone trying things on and they came out of the fitting room and they just weren't fresh anymore. Or something got sent to a seamstress and back to you, and the seamstress's house or car maybe had a bad smell, and now you need to address that on the gown so the gown doesn't smell. So that is kind of what this is for, was formulated for. It is water, vinegar, and a little bit of essential oil. Now, if you can find rubbing alcohol, feel free when you get the recipe to substitute rubbing alcohol for the vinegar. But what this does is it's just gonna freshen the gown up, make it smell nice, and both the vinegar and the alcohol in here do have some antiviral characteristics. So it's just kind of that maybe third tier, we're gonna call this, right? And so I would spray this again on the same places that you steamed. Remember that steam, just like soap, is going to help open up the fibers so things can fall out. So when you're doing this, any of those things that might have been left in there, you're giving it one more chance to get hit with something and help it die. Then something we really forget about after you've done those is you need to clean that hanger. Because even as much as the gown has been touched, the hanger's been touched too, right? So I think at this point you could use a wipe of some sort. But what I do is I just use my cloth that we had here and some of the freshener spray, because the vinegar and alcohol also can act as a soap. Bring this hanger down here so you can see what I'm doing. You're just gonna wipe the hanger in the areas that it's been touched. Don't forget to do that, because the hanger is a harder surface than the fabric. And actually it has been shown that hangers or hard surfaces, the virus will live on them longer than fabric surfaces. So don't forget to wipe the hangers off. Okay, I'm gonna take a minute and answer a few of these questions that have come in while we've been talking about this before I go on. Dana, what brands of steamers, irons do you recommend? Feel free to email me for that. There's several great brands, so I don't have a specific brand. I can always tell you I use a Reliable. They've been at Bridal Market before, and that's where I found them. So I use them, but there's really not a special one you have to have. If you come to market in the spring, I usually do a pressing seminar, and we can talk a little more about that then too. Kathleen, can a disinfectant spray just be sprayed on gown instead of steaming? No, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Dorothy says, is it more important to steam the outer garment than the inner? I think it's equally important. The inner, she could have sweat, she could have, it's against her skin. So I think that the inner is just as important as the outer. And then what about steam on the hangers? You could put steam on the hangers. They're gonna not cool off as quickly. Plastic hangers might, but you got that little metal thing, and it could disintegrate them. So my advice would be to wipe them down, but feel free to experiment with that. But my advice would be not to use steam on your hanger and just do that on the fabric, because we know how that's going to go. So I want to go back again to my gown freshener, because I know there's some questions about disinfecting gowns with alcohol, with vodka, a disinfectant spray, those type of things. So this is still a wedding gown. And even though it's a sample gown, there's a good chance at some point we want to sell this gown off the rack, and we want to get it out the door. So we still want to take care of it as a high-end garment. So that is one reason I do not recommend spraying a disinfectant on the gowns. There are lots and lots of ingredients in a disinfectant, in a marketed disinfectant, that I don't know how they would respond to the fabric. And you may end up with disintegrating beads over time. You may end up with funny spotches. It's very possible that you're going to end up with streaks or splotches where that disinfectant hit some parts of the fabric more than others. So I do not recommend that. I know that the age-old recipe for theater is half distilled water and half cheap vodka, and you just spray that on the gown, on the costumes, and it takes care of great things. And I have cleaned theater costumes. I've been involved in theater, and in our dry cleaners, we handle theater costumes all the time. So I do have a good understanding of theater costumes. They are very different than wedding gowns. I have some great friends You might be watching. I have great friends in the bridal industry who swear by that, and they're going to use it on their gowns no matter what I say. If that's you, I still love you. They're your gowns. If you want to use vodka, you may. But let me explain why I don't recommend it. When you use rubbing alcohol, like you could use in this mix, it is very different from a drinking alcohol. Drinking alcohols come from distilleries that distill, and sugar is a byproduct. Some alcohols have lots of sugar, some don't. And, you know, you guys know that if you drink. If you spray something that might have some residual sugar in it on a piece of clothing, especially white clothing, that can oxidize over time and you can end up with little brown spots. Again, on theater, that may not be as big of a problem. Often most of those are colored costumes, and you know, it's a whole different type of clothing that is worn. So I think with a wedding gown, I do not recommend using any kind of vodka or another kind of drinking alcohol. Rubbing alcohol, again, is safe if it's distilled. I use that. But so that's kind of my answer on all of that kind of thing. Amanda, how about a natural disinfectant spray such as thieves cleaner? You could put, so my recipe for this, and again, you're all going to get it, it's distilled water, vinegar or alcohol, and a drop or two of essential oil. I use the essential oil for just to help it smell a little better. You could certainly use thieves in there, and you know, there may be some benefit to the actual oil, but the oil in there is just made to give a nice smell. Again, oil is going to oxidize on white gowns. The same thing, especially essential oils, they're coming from plants. They have some sugars in them, that type of thing. I'm really afraid of what they would do over time. And it's hard to wash out oil. So you can dry clean out oil, but if you're dry cleaning wedding gowns, you have another set of issues. So I really think that I would stay away from any kind of disinfectant spray, cleaning thing you're going to spray on a dress. And I really do think steam or washing the dress is going to be the best way to do it. I won't hate you if you don't agree with me and you try something different, but I got the floor right now, so that's kind of what, you know, my opinion. So after we've done all that, we've steamed the gown. We have sprayed our freshener spray on it. We've wiped down our hanger. Now we're going to let the gown rest in the holding area as long as you can. You have a bride coming the next hour who's the same size and same style as the bride you just had, and you're like, oh, I really need to get that gown out so she can try it. Take it out and let her try it. It's going to be fine. But the longer you can leave it to just sit, the better. So again, if you've got the time and the space, leave it hanging in the holding area a little longer. Also, I want to readdress the plastic bag thing, because as you can tell now, we've put moisture in this. We've possibly sprayed a little bit of things on it. I like the gowns to sit in the open air now, because if you start putting it back in a plastic bag, you're building up humidity. And that may actually be counterintuitive, because as humidity and a warm gown go together in this plastic bag, all of a sudden you have a way for things to grow again. So we want to take away from that. Let me look at a few of these questions before I move on to washing gowns. Franca says, do you have a written list of the things that a bridal store should have when we reopen? Things beside the basic procedures. You know, this is handling the gowns is my area of expertise. So I don't have, you know, everything else, really, I haven't done the science and things on other, what else should be your basic procedures. I think a lot of common sense is out there, and I think there's a lot of really good information. You know, think about the things that we don't think about. Think about the handles to your fitting rooms. We're cleaning the hangers. What about the hanging hooks in your fitting room? I would just go through all those areas at least once a day and wipe them down. If we cause watermarks by accident while steaming, what are your recommendations for removing watermarks? If you get a watermark on a polyester gown, just set it aside, take a couple breaths. It should dry just fine, and you won't ever know it was there if it was truly just water. If it's a silk gown, set it aside, do the same thing, and call your wedding care, your gown care professional, whether it's a dry cleaner you know and work with, or your gown care company that you use, or a member of the Association of Wedding Gown Specialists, or me. I'm a text away. That's when you need a pro. Elizabeth, 1 cloth per dress. Yeah, I would better be safe than sorry. Terrell, what scent of essential oil do you like best, and where do you buy it? Oh, there's 1,000 places to buy it. I don't know that you need the most expensive when you're doing this type of thing. And my very favorite is orange. What about breathable bags? Rosario, breathable bags are great if you are storing the gown. I'm talking about gowns that the some stores put their sample gowns in plastic bags so they can still be seen, so a bride can choose what she wants to try on, but they can't be touched. Breathable bags are fine for storing wedding gowns. I highly recommend them. I think they're great. Is spraying a polyester gown going to leave spots? Elizabeth asks. Not if you do it correctly. You want to make sure your mister is a very fine mist. You're not going to hold it right up next to the fabric. You're going to just mist it. You know, think of it this way. Smoother fabrics, you need to be a little more careful with touching, spraying, steaming. So satin, those are going to be things that are going to be a little more prone to showing things. Once, you know, the gown I'm using to demonstrate here, I'll hold it here. It's a jasmine, so shout out to anyone who carries jasmine. This jasmine gown, I mean, it's lace, and then it's got embroidered lace over the lace, and then it's got beading over that. I could spray, you know, I could make it wet and you'd never know because there's enough texture on the gown that doesn't show as far as wet spots, and they're gonna dry. Alita, our dressing rooms are enclosed by polyester curtains. We plan on spraying them with Lysol between appointments. What are your thoughts on that? So my thoughts personally is I would not want to go into a fitting room that has had Lysol sprayed on the curtains a couple times a day. Maybe if there's an unscented kind you could use or something like that. I think some of us, I don't say that right, all of us are in danger of overcompensating and making an unpleasant environment. I would say unless the curtains have been touched or sneezed on, things like that, that maybe leave them be. People aren't using them to wipe their face. And again, you know, I'm not seeing them. I don't know how close they are to each other or how often they get touched. So I don't have a really good answer to that, except to think about if you're going to do things that you're disinfecting soft surfaces in your boutique. We all need to be clean, and that needs to be important, but we also do not, we don't want to, you know, cause an allergic reaction or make it an unpleasant environment. So my thoughts for what they're worth there. Again, not necessarily my area of expertise. Elizabeth, if we don't have the option to clean between uses, are you recommending not to store in clear bridal bags? That is my recommendation, yes. I think that if you take a gown and you put it in a plastic bag, and there's at all the possibility that it has been contaminated, then it's giving it a good environment in which for those contaminants to grow and to replicate themselves. So I think the best thing to do is to actively try to remove any contaminants by the steaming and killing them and those type of things. And if not, I think neutral is better. Just not doing anything would be better than putting them in plastic gown bags at this time. Now, you can wait the 24 hours and then put them in your plastic gown bags. And according to the science, I see that should be fine. Okay, I think I've caught up with the questions. These are awesome. Thank you all so much. I'm so happy to be discussing this with you guys, and just so happy for the thoughtful discussion you're provoking here. So now I want to talk a little about how you would actually clean a sample gown. What if somebody sneezes on a gown and you're like, I can't steam this all out, right? Or a customer calls and says, I was in yesterday and I just found out I've been exposed or I'm having symptoms. And, you're thinking, oh, now what do we do? These gowns have to get cleaned. So let me preface this with, I am a wedding gown care pro. And there are many, many wonderful wedding gown care pros around the country who we spend our lives learning how to care for these fabrics. If you have a gown that's going out to a bride, she bought a sample gown and it needs to go out for her wedding, please contact a pro. Please give that to a pro. Yes, you can clean gowns at home, and I'm going to give you some good ways that you can do that. But I've also seen one small mistake go south very quickly. And the last thing any of us want to do right now is to add any stress to ourselves or our brides in this situation. So when I talk about cleaning a wedding gown, a sample gown at home, I'm going to just highly recommend that you always have a gown pro that you trust on call, and that you really watch what you're doing, not because you're not capable of doing it or that dry cleaners and gown care professionals like me are trying to take advantage of you. No, we just know what can happen when it goes south. So that said, and with those caveats, I want you to know you can clean lace or polyester wedding gowns on your own. If you have a large enough machine or a small enough gown, okay? You're going to use mild detergent, you're going to use warm water, and you're going to hang it to dry. Never put a wedding gown in the dryer. Never put a wedding gown in the dryer. Never put a wedding gown in a dryer. Hang it to dry. If you're going to be doing this, it might be a good investment to find a very large mesh laundry bag that can help contain some of the layers of tulle and lace. I've had it happen to me, and I've had it happen to other people, where tulle will wind itself up and get caught in the mechanism of the machine, and pretty soon, you had a really nice horsehair braid that's all sorts of wonky. And, the money you saved on cleaning the gown is now going to your seamstress to put all brand new horsehair braid on it. So make sure your machine is either large enough, or you're using a mesh bag, or that the gown is just a simple lace sheath that you can put in the wash machine. Like I said, for large gowns, for silk gowns, never try to clean silk at home. There are some silk gowns that can be very easily washed, but telling the difference between that and a gown that cannot be washed really takes a lot of experience and time to learn that. So I would just recommend not trying to clean a silk gown at home unless you've been trained. And anything unusual, leave it to us pros. This is what we do for a living. And how to find a good pro near you. I know I grew up in the dry cleaning industry, and dry cleaners often get a bad rap. Like they're trying to take advantage of people, or they ruin things. And I can tell you from knowing dry cleaners from the time I was young, that's not them. They're honest, awesome people who, just like you, own a business and try to do their very best. And sometimes things don't go right. And those seem to be the things that are magnified in that industry. But 99% of the time, they know exactly what they're doing and they do it so very well. So your local dry cleaner, start a conversation with them about helping you with your wedding gowns. And if you don't know anyone, look up if they're a member of DLI, which is the Dry Cleaning and Laundry Institute. That association offers a lot of training to their members, and their members have to keep up certain things. So that's a good place to look. I mentioned I'm a member of the Association of Wedding Gown Specialists, which is also mostly dry cleaners who do wedding gowns as well. And we all help each other when we have things and we have trainings. So that group of people is really good to research. They have a website with a directory, as does the Dry Cleaning and Laundry Institute. Or of course, if you're already using a gown care company for your preservations or something else, they're awesome too. Reach out to them, but have a pro at your disposal so that if you get stuck or you have a problem with cleaning a wedding gown, you've got somebody you can reach out to. And as I said before, I'm a text away and happy to share my text and my email with you guys if you ever have a question or a problem about cleaning wedding gowns. So I don't see any questions on that. Hi, Jane.
Hey, Tami, thank you so very much. It was very, very informative. We did have a question. Where did you get the Chevron mannequins from?
Hobby Lobby.
Hobby Lobby, okay.
They're from Hobby Lobby.
Okay.
Yes.
You had said in the very beginning to have these workstations centralized so people can get to them easy. Is it also not a good idea to put these where the actual customers can see that you are intently doing this to the gowns in between the appointments, so that they
I would certainly say put it in the back of your fitting area, your kind of behind the scenes area. I mentioned fitting area just because it's nice and close to where, you're not having to haul them all over the store. But okay. Yeah, maybe even, if you have an extra fitting room right now, you could set it up in an extra fitting room or something like that.
Okay. And we did have a question. What is the difference between disinfecting and sanitizing, or are they the same?
They're the same. How I use it, they're the same.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. And what about the inside of the lining of the skirt part? Is this also important to steam as much as the bodice, or do you feel that it's mostly the part that really comes in contact with the body?
Yeah, I would not worry so much about that. Hopefully, you're having your brides wearing undergarments and things like that. So I would say if we're practicing most of the other cleaning things, I would not worry about those parts of the gown as much.
Okay. And what about leather chairs? This was one of the first questions we had.
Yes. Yep. Leather chairs. And also I want to make sure I give a little information on UV lights, because somebody had asked about that as well. Leather chairs, I would just use a leather cleaner and wipe them down. I clean some leather through my studio occasionally, and I treat it just like fabric. So I would just get a leather cleaner. That soap that's in there will help take care of whatever is left on the chair.
And you think that would be, you don't think you need a stronger disinfectant for that?
I don't think so. I think as long as you are applying soap to it with a cloth that's going to pick things up, I think that would be sufficient. I would find it if I had leather chairs in here, we just have a hard plastic, and that is what we're doing in between, is we are just cleaning it up that way.
Okay. And what about the UV lights?
Yeah.
What is the outcome of that? To make people happy?
Yeah. UV lights is a great question. My husband actually works for a company that is working on UV lights for disinfecting large areas. So I had a little inside knowledge on this, and I also did some research. Cheap UV lights those that cost you under 300 or 400 do not typically give out what is needed to kill this virus. So that's kind of what I read about, if you're going to spend that much, why do it? Steam and the other things we've talked about are just as effective. So I think, why would you buy something extra? My other concern about UV lights is we've all seen gowns that have been in one place too long with the beading turned to UV lighting or in a window of a bridal store, and they discolor. And I don't know how these handheld devices are going to affect that, but we do know that over time UV light does turn fabrics and beading bad colors. So I think that using steam and these other things that have been proven that fabrics can handle is better.
Okay. And if the dressing rooms do have curtains instead of a door, do you suggest that periodically or after each bride comes in that they spritz or disinfect the curtains in some way, because people have been touching them and hitting them on the way in and on the way out? And the same for any other fabric textiles that are in the shop, whether you're sitting on an upholstered chair, a leather chair, or whatever, that they should be periodically wiped down in between people sitting on them.
That is what we are doing in our studio. We are wiping down hard surfaces, and then we are spritzing the curtains, and then I am washing those curtains more frequently.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I'm doing it every day, but if we do have a couple days back to back, or I know we have appointments coming up, I will wash them.
All right. We also forget about talking about the counters for people check in and out of the store, and what they're coming in contact with, which I think is also important to talk about, and have maybe one specific person in the store that's wearing gloves and going around and just doing this on a in between appointment basis. So
yeah, we have an between appointment basis here that we do, and then at the end of each day, I do something broader.
Okay, and what kind of broader things do you do?
I guess just more things that would take more time, vacuuming, doorknobs, those kind of things, making sure the bathroom gets cleaned, those kind of things.
Okay, and after, this is a question that just came in from Maria, how long should we wait between one client and the next to try on the same dress after sanitizing it?
I said, leave it as long as possible, but don't miss out the sale. So I think as long as you're doing it the way you're doing it, the way I've taught you here, I think you're fine to go ahead and try it back on, because it's the steam that is killing the virus.
And it's just the instant puff of the steam, or is it how long that steam is on the dress?
Yeah,
it depends on the killing of the virus.
So you want your iron to be close, and you want to go over it. You're not doing this. So okay. It needs to be on the fabric, a couple times over it.
Okay. All right. And then the cloths that you're using to wipe down the hangers that you're spritzing with your disinfectant, they can then be washed once a day or whatever in a Clorox solution or some kind of strong sanitizing solution, and then reused.
Soap and
with
water.
Hot water.
Just with soap and water.
With soap and water.
We have a stack of them. We have a stack right here.
Okay.
We just grab each customer each time we're going to do it. We grab a new cloth. We, use either a cleaning spray or the gown freshener spray, whichever is closest. We wipe down and we toss this in a laundry basket, and we wash a batch for the next day.
But you don't need, just hot soap and water is fine for that? You don't need to put any Clorox or anything?
Soap and water is sufficient. Yep.
Okay. And then you suggest after using it once, you toss it, you don't reuse it again to do the next hanger or whatever?
Not at this time, because we're all trying to be so extra careful.
Okay. All right. Yes, we will be putting Tami's information up for everybody to see, and website, phone numbers. I don't know if you want that given out or not, but you'll be getting some calls. How do you recommend brides store gowns if their wedding has been postponed till next year?
So I put them in the mesh bridal bags, no plastic.
Okay.
Or wrap them in a white sheet and store them flat. You don't want them hanging. They can hang. The stress can cause them to go out of shape.
Okay.
Flat, either in the bag that you supply to them or wrapped in a white sheet. If you give out plastic bags or something, tell them to go home and find an old sheet.
Do you suggest turning them inside out like they were shipped from the factory?
I'm sorry, I missed that, Jane.
I said, do you suggest turning the dresses inside out as they were shipped from the factory to if there's going to be an extended period of time that they're not going to be worn?
Not if they're not getting moved around a lot. The reason they do that is, to keep all those beads and stuff
Right.
from rubbing against other things.
Okay.
If you're only dealing with one gown at a time, that's not necessary.
All right. And can you give us the proportions for your potions of the water, the alcohol, the oil?
Yes. So it is, I'm going to actually have to look it up because I make it in batches, but I'm pretty sure it is 2 parts distilled water to 1 part vinegar and
Okay.
a dash or 2 of your favorite essential oil.
Okay. And this is important. We haven't talked about this. Do you suggest, and I'm sure everybody has their own opinion of this, for the people that are working in the stores, should they be wearing a smock to keep any kind of particles off of their clothes to protect them while they're waiting on people, and wearing plastic gloves and bathrooms? Should there be somebody available to go in and clean the bathrooms after every use? I mean, there's so many things that we have to think about in a store.
Right. So epidemiology is not my area of knowledge.
Okay.
So I don't know that I have, scientific answers on that. I can tell you the way our team has looked at it and knowing about fabrics and things like that. We do not wear smocks. We clean our clothes when we get home from work.
Okay.
I guess that would, but I'm an empty nester, so are my seamstresses. I think that all might depend on you and your team's lifestyle. If it's something where they're having to pick up kids from daycare and they're wearing their work clothes, that might be something you want to protect more. If it's just you and, for me, it's just me. I go home and I change my clothes. And so I'm not as concerned about it, but that would be, I don't see any evidence of coronavirus falling off of clothing.
Okay.
So that is one thing, to think about as we're talking about curtains and our problem is touching things after someone else has touched them.
Okay. That's a good point. We had another question, which is really general for the whole time, even without the virus. Is it a bad idea to store a wedding gown in a plastic storage container or a bag for more than 6 months if a bride's wedding has been postponed?
Yes, it is bad to store in plastic for any length of time, any kind of fabric. Fabric needs to breathe. Okay. So whether we're talking about a wedding gown or a christening gown or your dad's old war uniform or things from one season to the next, get them out of plastic for storage.
Okay, and they could be wrapped in a bed sheet, a cotton bed sheet, stored in a dry
cotton bed
place.
sheet, an acid-free cardboard, tissue.
Okay, yep. All right. Just see, we have a couple more minutes. We really want to know about disinfecting fabric couches and chairs. I'm wondering, I don't know Breeze, but I'm wondering if that would be a good thing to use.
What my suggestion would be is, I don't know. So I would call a local furniture store in your area. They're going to be knowledgeable about upholstery fabric, just like your local dry cleaner is knowledgeable about wearable fabric. I would just put a call into them and say, I own a bridal store. I have a fabric couch. What's your industry saying about cleaning those things? I think that would be a worthwhile phone call.
Okay, that's a great idea. And this is a great question. What about disposable measuring tapes? We use those tapes to measure people's bodies. And that's a very good question.
Mhm.
Do you dispose of a measuring tape after touching somebody's body? I would say yes.
Yeah, I think we measure overclothes. So I don't necessarily, in our studio, we're not being overly concerned about that. But if you're measuring skin on skin, certainly.
Yep, I would say yes. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add to this great webinar on this subject?
I don't think that I have anything. I think there have been great questions. I really appreciate the thoughtful discussion. And really appreciate you, Jane, letting me come on and talk about something I'm obviously passionate about.
That's great. That's really great. And we will be having a follow-up webinar in a couple weeks to kind of give everybody a chance to get reopened. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot more questions. And we'll be inviting all of our exhibitors that are in the wedding gown preservation area category. And we look forward to that. And we also recommend, as you say, all the Association of Wedding Gown Specialists, they have a full list of their members. We also have other great companies that are part of our roster that you can look on our schedule, and we will be posting those that you can contact directly across the country, because everybody is opening up at a different time, and we all are in this together, and we need to help each other out with these very difficult issues that we're having. So Tami, I'd really like to thank you so much. I hope everybody in your family and loved ones, that everybody is healthy. And if anybody has any more specific questions, you can all contact me and I will get you to the right person. And we will have continued instructional webinars to help everybody through this difficult time. We will also be letting everybody know soon what we're going to be doing, and with the upcoming markets. Unfortunately, we are in Chicago, so it's a little difficult right now to know where we're going to be. But I do wish and hope that everybody stays healthy and well. And best of luck with everybody getting back to business and staying healthy in the meantime. So everybody have a wonderful long weekend, relax, enjoy, and we will all be talking to you soon. And Tami, thank you so much and have a great day.
You're welcome. Bye-bye,
Okay,
everybody.
bye-bye. See you. Bye-bye.